Good day dear friends, welcome to another episode of the Culinary Masterclass supported by La Fundación por la Formación Hotelière. Today we are preparing a classic Serbian dish that I believe you have all heard of. Maybe you have even had the opportunity to try it. Karadjordje steak. A top-notch dish of Serbian cuisine prepared with top-notch ingredients and yet simple to prepare. Now I will show you the method of preparation so that you may someday want to prepare it in your home or restaurant. Here we have a nice piece of pork fillet that we have previously processed, cleaned of excess veins and fat. To prepare Karadjordje steak, we need about 180 to 220 grams of meat. This fillet is a little larger so we could prepare even 2 portions from it, but that would be a little more difficult for inexperienced cooks because of these thinner ends of the fillet. We will now separate this central part of the fillet for one Karadjordje steak. And these ends of the fillet can be used to prepare medallions, some skewers, cut into strips for sautéing and the like. So we cut off these ends and leave them for further preparation of some dishes, and we press this central part and gently cut in the middle to get a larger surface of meat. When I explain to someone, I usually say that we cut the meat so that it is joined at the end, but that it can be folded like the wings of a butterfly. You see? Let's separate and we have a much larger area of meat that we will now separate to get a leaner steak. Since it's pork, we can pound the meat nice and thin, but if you try to prepare this from chicken fillet, then you won't be able to thinly slice the meat because the chicken is much softer, and if it gets too thin, the meat simply falls apart. That's why chicken cutlets are always much thicker. I took this small bag for the freezer, and we will use this bag to thinly slice the meat without the hammer sticking to the meat. If you don't have this bag, then you can dip the hammer in cold water and then slowly roll the steak. And now slowly beat the meat little by little to separate it. I have already emphasized several times in the recipes, you spread the meat little by little over the entire surface, so you gradually thin it out and get a larger surface of the steak. Do not hit one end hard to thin, but a little at a time over the entire surface. Move the bag a little and beat again. Try to get the nicest and most regular shape of the steak so that in the end you have a uniform steak with a nice shape and uniform thickness. And now pay attention, this part of the steak will be the last, so we will separate it completely, and when we wrap the steak, this part of the meat will be completely stuck together and it will not be noticeable where the beginning and where the end of the steak is. We have thinned the steak as much as necessary to a thickness of 3 to 4 millimeters, and that is the thickness that suits us. Now we will salt the steak a little, but only a little, because we will fill the steak with old Kajmak. Kajmak is a dairy product made from premium milk fat, and is often used in the cuisine of Serbia, Bosnia, Montenegro, i.e. all countries of the former Yugoslavia. If you do not have real homemade Kajmak, which is very tasty, salty, milky taste and firm structure, then you can use some combination of grated cheeses and sour cream, but make sure that your structure is as compact as possible so that you can easily fill the meat and then shape it. However, the best option is to fill with old Kajmak that has aged and that will then be a real Karadjordje steak. Do not fill them with some pieces of prosciutto, ham or similar, as some chefs do in some restaurants. Do not do that, A real Karadjordje steak is filled only with quality Kajmak. This steak was invented by the famous Serbian chef Miko Stojanovic at the Belgrade restaurant Golf when he had a high-ranking guest at a dinner party who requested Kiev cutlet, but Miko did not have the necessary ingredients for that specialty, so he made this dish from the ingredients he had and named it after the famous Serbian history military leader Karadjordje. We have salted the steak and now we will fill it with this high-quality cream cheese. You see the steak, it is not exactly rectangular in shape. I have now expanded this side a little more to get this irregular shape so that I can show you how to correct it. Fold the steak a little and then hit it again with a hammer to separate the meat. This way you can always fix the shape of the steak and stick the meat to the meat. Now we add the cream and shape it nicely. If somewhere in a restaurant you notice that this steak is cheap, then know that they don't use real cream because the price of real cream is quite high, so just in case, ask the staff what they fill it with if it's so cheap. You will get your hands a little dirty, but it doesn't matter, you need to shape the cream. To prevent the cream from leaking out, fold the ends of the steak a little. And when we fold it, we put this bag back in and hit it lightly with a hammer to stick the meat to each other and to thin it out because we want the same thickness of the complete steak. And now we take the knife again, slowly underline and stick to the cream. Underline and gently wrap, tighten and roll up. Look at this part, it's the part that we completely thin so that it sticks to the meat as easily as possible. And here we have a nice steak that is uniform in thickness and shape. We're going to turn on our heater to heat the oil. For this dish, it is necessary to add a little more oil, about 1.5 to 2 liters of oil, but okay. Karađorđe steak. I assume that you will not make it for just one person, but for several people, so you will be able to use a large amount of oil for several steaks. For frying, use a deep pan or pot in which you will pour a large amount of oil, or a small home fryer if you have one. Our steak is ready for breading in the Viennese way. This means that we will roll the steak in flour, then in eggs, then in breadcrumbs. This is called Viennese breading. We will take 2 eggs for breading. Beat the eggs well, very well so that the eggs can stick to the meat more easily. It happens in the kitchen and let's get some sleep. Now roll the steak in flour, from all sides so that a thin layer of flour sticks to the meat. Shake off the excess flour from the steak and now dip it in eggs. Turn the steak so that the eggs stick on all sides so that it can stick to the eggs and breadcrumbs. This is necessary to do well in order to create a small crust around the steak that will not allow the cream to leak out. If you don't use old quality cream, but some mixture of cheese and sour cream, then it will be a little more difficult to turn and bread the steak like this, so pay attention to that as well. Now roll in breadcrumbs. If you happen to see meat somewhere or you didn't roll it well, it's not a problem, just roll it in eggs and then in breadcrumbs. You can see how dirty my hands are now, eggs and breadcrumbs stuck to my fingers, but that's okay, it always happens. You can also see that the steak is not the right shape. Here I washed my hands and now with wet hands I roll the steak and you can see how I smoothed it and shaped it nicely. The steak should be just like this. The required oil temperature is around 160 to 170 degrees Celsius. It is very difficult to determine at home, but to know, set it to a temperature that is not the highest on your sprat. The maximum temperature here is 6, I set the oil to heat up to number 5 and when I put the steak to fry in the oil, I will reduce it to number 4. To know if the oil is heated enough, you can insert a toothpick into the oil. If bubbles form around the toothpick, it means that the oil is heated up enough. Look, we have bubbles around the toothpick, our oil is ready. Take out the toothpick and now put the steak to fry. When we put the steak in the hot fat, we lower it slightly away from us so that the hot fat does not burn us. You can see how a third of the steak is sticking out. Ideally the steak should be completely submerged in fat, but then we would need to use a lot more oil. We will now turn this steak little by little so that it is fried equally on all sides. In the restaurant, we fry the steak in deep fat, completely submerged, and then we do not need to turn the steak. We will turn our steak little by little and fry it for about 8 minutes until it gets a nice copper color on all sides. Also, what I would advise you to do is to save on the amount of oil and the time of preparation, as well as the time of frying, then you can make smaller steaks. The weight of the meat is about 100 to 120 grams. I now made a real restaurant portion, but you can make smaller pieces at home and then you will fry them more easily and you can put more pieces than once in the pan to be fried. Karadjordje Schnitzel can be made from pork or veal meat, but if you don't like this type of meat, you can also prepare it from chicken meat, but then you have to emphasize that. The steak will be ready soon. We will immediately prepare the side dish. I decided to prepare fries because they are usually served with the Karadjordje steak in the restaurant, but you can use the side dish as you wish. It is also mandatory to serve the tartar sauce with the steak, as usual with all fried dishes. Tartar sauce will go well with this dish and fries. Our steak is ready. This is the color of the steak it should be when it is done. Be careful when you take it out so that your steak doesn't crack and the cream doesn't leak out and you don't accidentally fry yourself. You see, the steak didn't crack anywhere. We did a good job of frying it. Now we will put the French fries in the same fat to fry, but you have to be very careful. I advise you to use this French spoon and gently lower the French fries into the hot fat because the French fries are frozen and the oil is very hot and there is a possibility that the oil will burst and fry us. That's why you slowly lower the French fries into the hot oil to fry with a chef's French spoon. When the fries are fried, increase the temperature to maximum. If you have a deep fryer at home, then you can fry all this in the deep fryer and make this job easier. Now I'm going to get a nice serving plate. I took the tartar sauce that I prepared yesterday and now I will pour the sauce into one bowl. Now it is practice that sauces are served in bowls next to the food, so that each guest takes as much sauce as he likes. I'm going to pour the sauce into this bowl that's shaped like a spoon and it's going to look nice on this plate. Always keep the tartar sauce in the refrigerator until use because it is the basic ingredient of mayonnaise and it is a very perishable sauce. The fries are ready, so we'll take them out with a French spoon. I use this spoon. It is much better for taking out fries than, for example, This rave spoon, from which the fries will often slip. Add a little salt to the fries and now we will serve them. Arrange the fries, add the steak, put the tartar sauce on the side and decorate with basil and a slice of lemon. Lemon is served with this dish to squeeze it and thus improve digestion because this is a very strong and fatty dish. This is a Serbian classic, a dish that is represented in almost all restaurants in Serbia. Now you have learned how to make this dish at home, try it. It takes a little more time to make it, but it is very tasty and I believe everyone will like it. Try it, surprise yourself and your guests. Enjoy, cook, love and create new recipes. Until the next video, bye. I also want to show you what a real Karadjordje steak looks like when cut in half. You can see how the cream is still there, the fat from the cream and the meat is slightly dripping, the meat is nicely and evenly fried. Yes. This is one great meal.